Welcome to part 2 of the Fokker DR1, and we are starting the build of the fuzz, or if you like, the fuselage. So, going from the book, we have to pin down a right and a left side of the fuselage from sheet 3 and 4, and we have fuselage doublers from sheet 2. Now, these are actually marked, which I think is a very good thing to do. And this says right fuselage, and this says right fuselage doubler, and it's the opposite for the opposite side. Now, I looked a few pages ahead because I wanted to know what it was all for, and I can confirm that these go on the inside of the fuselage. So don't put them on the outside, make sure they go on the inside. So therefore the writing goes on the inside. So that writing there goes with that writing there, that goes on the inside. So in other words, when you do the left side, it'll look like this, okay? And that goes that way, like that. Yes? Okay. So I just wanted to make sure of that, and I'll tell you for why, because you can learn from a mistake I made about 40 years ago. I was making a glider and I made 2 right hands on the fuselage. And I've never forgotten it. So what we don't want to do, we don't want to use cyno, or if you like, what do you call it, that quick glue. God, I'm losing the will to speak English again. Yeah, super glue. Don't use super glue or cyno on this part. Use a PVA. Okay. Now they're saying in the instructions to use some protractors or right angles. They're actually using carpenter's right angles, which look very, very expensive. I don't know where they got them from. So here's some right angles that I have from a geometry set. Alright, I've had these donkeys. I don't know whether I had these at school or not. Probably not. I don't know. I wonder what happened to those. Anyway, who cares? But you will note that I don't know whether you can see that there. There's a line along there to guide you to put the back end like that, and I think somewhere in the instructions it says to cut not all the way through, but to cut it along there on the outside. So I think that's your guide there. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. So it is, I also would recommend using PVC glue on here, because you've got to get it smack on lined up. And if you put CA glue on it, cyno, it is absorbed instantly into the wood, and you won't be able to move it. You will be able to have no adjustment. So I would say don't use cyno, for goodness sakes, because you will fail immediately before you've even started. And just put the top back on there. I don't have a spreader, so I'm going to have to use my finger and just spread it around fairly evenly like that. Okay, all the nooks and crannies. Now it does say to pin these down, so I'm doing this one side only. With the drawing, pin to the drawing. So wipe my finger. There you go. The excess. So I'll do the other side separately, because I don't suppose it really matters where you pin it down. But anyway, there you go. So according to the instructions, you use your protractor, your right angle, to make sure it's absolutely spot on. that says to me there. It's got to go slightly forward, but yeah. I mean, it's even with the PVA, it's doesn't like to move very much. And then it says to put a heavy weight on it and leave it. And I just thought to myself, I didn't read how long it takes for this glue to go off. I'm actually putting that to that line there, smack on that line. It might improve things. I hope my hands are not in the way. Right, that looks right to me now. Now the thing is, when they say get it smack on, it's you could get a bit nervous doing it. Well, anyway, as far as I can see, that's good as. Now I want to put a bit more. It's got a feeling about it. It's lifted. Put a bit more on. Because that is soaking into the wood. Sucking it in. Yeah, I'll shut up because I'm concentrating. It's a nice change, isn't it? Me not talking. And then it says to use a heavy weight. Now the only heavy weight I got is me. And I don't think me sitting on it is going to do it any good. I'll have to find a toolbox or something. Some modelers have metal squares and tubes. Not tubes, metal squares and tubes. What am I talking about? Tubes. Metal cubes. And they use them for weighting down and also for gluing ribs in on wings. Now that is as exact as I can get it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause it there, do the other side, because it's going to be exactly the same as this, so I'm just wasting your valuable time. Okay, and I'll let that go off, and I'll come back to you when I've got the other side done and both sides are dry. Okay, well this is 24 hours later. It looks like those doublers are now quite secure. Even though I put some weight on it, there's a slight bow. Never mind, I don't think it's going to affect anything. It's just the way the glue's dried with the absorbency of the wood, because balsa is very, very absorbent. So now we have a right and a left, the doublers in. Now I'll go on about the rest of that in just a second. Now I kept mentioning about the history of the Red Baron, or Manfred von Richthofen as he's known. We've just missed the anniversary of his death, which is the 21st of April 1918, and this was part of Operation Michael that was done by the Germans, who basically what had happened was that the Russians had capitulated because of the Russian Revolution, came out of the Great War, which then released, I can't remember how many million Germans it was, which then went straight to the Western Front, saw the British as the weakest point and drove through, and obviously Manfred was part of that Operation Michael. So yeah, he died pretty early on in that Operation Michael, which obviously did not succeed in the long run. But anyway, they show you his Fokker DR1 there with the leverage that's shown on this model here. However, Now, looking at some of the black and white photographs that we have here, I was trying to find them now, you'll see there's a white square with a black cross, and that's not the only one showing it. Now, he did fly more than one aircraft, obviously, that was painted red, and there it is again. So I don't know exactly what the livery was when he died, and again it shows you the same aircraft again with the white squares and the black cross. I think it looks more interesting with the white square and the black cross, personally, but I don't know, we'll have to make our minds up when we get to that point. But it's something that you may need to consider. Now again, white squares, black crosses. So you may need to consider either doing further research. I'm tempted to do the white square with the black cross. Now if I do that, there's his brother. His brother was an ace as well. So if you want to do a different livery, then there's a way of doing it, and that is, I went down to, now in the UK we have a shop called Wilko's. I can't remember how much this cost. It wasn't that cheap, to be honest with you. You get 2 meters of this vinyl, white vinyl, and all you have to do is just measure it up, cut it out, put your black cross on it, and then stick it on the side of the aircraft. And I'm thinking that's probably the most pragmatic way of doing this. This is not the first time I've done it, and a few people that I know have done it this way by buying some vinyl. And this will last you years, this stuff, because you're only using little pieces. So there's something for you to consider. This is DC Fix. It's German design foil. So it's quite appropriate when you think about it. So if you want to know about the Red Baron, he actually wrote this book. Now obviously he didn't write it in German, in English. It was written in German, and this is the translation of that book, and he wrote it himself. I'm not really sure whether he was coerced in writing it to write it. Probably. How many pages is it? Let's have a look. In total, let's have a look now, it's 125 pages, so it's not exactly a novel. You can read that, you know, in an afternoon. Well, I can read that in an afternoon. Some people may not want to. But it says the story of the Red Baron is told by Manfred von Richthofen himself, and it's called The Red Fighter Pilot, Manfred von Richthofen. He wrote that. So I think it's only fair, if you're going to build the guy's plane, read the book. It's his own words. It's his own words. Anyway, more history on him, maybe in the next episode. So we're going to carry on from this now. We have a right and a left, as you can see there. Okay, and I think the next part is to put these parts in here. So I'll be straight back. Well, I've just lost 2 days of building because I've had to flatten that out. There's still a slight curve in it. I'm going to try and use that to my advantage, but basically I got it flat again. Now, according to the instructions, you've got to put this little piece of 1/16 11.5mm long on the nose. Now, the printing is not great, and I only slightly noticed that there are a dotted line. I don't know whether you can see that dotted line, but I managed to get that 1/16 and then that dotted line on the inside of both sides of the fuselage. So there's also some other dotted lines on here, and they're really faint. They could do with being a bit darker, but never mind. So I've glued those on, ready, and I've just about got them flat again. And so the next thing after that is to turn the page, and it's telling you now. I spent more time looking for the parts. They give you this roll of paper looking for parts. So with this you get F1. Take this part out here. You get your F1, okay, you get your F2, you put them together, and then you get, now let's see if I get this right, C10. This is C10, and that slots in there like that, making sure that F1 is at the front. Now F1 is a bit, the marking's a bit faint there, could be a little bit better on that, and you line them up with C10. So that goes through there, and that goes through there, and it tells you to put 3 or 4 spots of glue on between them, and another place it tells you to wick it. So it takes your choice. Then you have to find the M3 bolts. What do they call them actually? They call them captive nuts, which is actually the correct word. You get your captive nuts, and that goes on the back of F2. So that F2 should look like that. But what you mustn't do, you must not glue that in. Don't glue that in. Really important, you don't glue that in. Okay, so that comes out, and you deal with that later. So what I'm going to do now, I'll just leave it there now, just so I can find them. I keep dropping things on the floor, and then I can't find them, and I spend 20 minutes with the broom sweeping the whole workshop trying to find things. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, and sometimes I find them weeks later. So I'm just going to spot treat this. Now I have a feeling I know why they want you to spot treat this. I think it's because if you have a crash it makes it easier to part it. I suspect. I don't know. But I get the impression I don't want that to be an absolutely solid thing. So I'm going to pop that in there, having put my thick sino in. I'm now going to slot that in there, trying to avoid the glue now. Oh dear, dear. Here we go. Always when the camera's on. Always when the camera's on. There you go. Okay, right, that's slotted together. Okay, and that looks like, yeah. You tend to find that sino will soak in pretty quick. Yeah, they look lined up. Then you have this ridge here that doesn't look all that level to me. Now what you got to do with that, you've got to chamfer that off, because I've read ahead a little bit. So let's see what it says. So then it says, right, locate the M3T captive nuts, insert them into the rear of F2 into the 4 holes as shown, make sure they are fully pressed into place, EN square. Well, I don't know what that means, but I think the only way to capture them is to grab some pliers. Oh, I had them in my hand earlier. Some needle nose pliers, and we'll just see if we can press those in. I don't know whether to hit it with a hammer or not. Shall I hit it with a hammer? What do you think? Shall I try it? Okay, let's grab a hammer. I hope I don't regret this. It seems to have worked. Hammer back. I'll just double check that the C10 still goes through, which it does. Now it says to put this away safe. So what I'll do is, somewhere around here is a pencil, and I can mark it C10. Let's see what I have here. I have a crayon. C10. mark it back and front, C10, and I'll pop it in that box over there. Right, so we're moving forward, so return the page to page 7. Right, this is bevel to etch line on F1. Well, that's F1. Ah, right, okay. I don't know whether you can see that. There's a very, very faint dotted line just along there. So somewhere around here I have a very small but sharp pencil, and I'll grab a straight edge. I'll try and re-emphasize that now. Let's have a look. Let's get it right. Just about see that dotted line, and yep, mark that up. Okay, leave that bit in there. Let's see what it says. Right, carefully bevel the lower edge of the form as is shown. Use the F line on F1, which is that there. As shown, the bevel should run from the etched line on F1 to the rear edge of F2, i.e. the overall height of F2 should remain the same. Now, do they mean to the back edge or to the front edge? The bevel should run etched line on F1 to the rear, to the back edge of F2. The overall height of F2 should remain the same. Well, why wouldn't it remain the same? Strange thing. Okay. Alright. So I'm going to rub that now. I'm going to use some coarse. This is P80, so it's 80 grains per inch. I'm going to turn the camera off now just to save a bit of time. There you go, you didn't have to wait long, did you? So that's what I've ended up with. Okay, didn't look anything too dramatic, and I'll go guess that about why that is. I don't know. Anyway, we'll find out. Anyway, yeah, because obviously at some point that's got to meet up with the underneath the fudge or the battery tray or something. Anyway, so on to the next bit. Now, I pre-prepared that one, which is the servo tray. Now, oh dear, what's happened here? That'll come to light in a minute or two. Now, there's a front and a back. This cutout is longer than this cutout, so the short cutout is the front, so I've marked it front on both sides. Okay, I believe in marking things, it saves on tiers later, and I've marked the back. So what they ask you to do is to put the two larger servos in, so obviously I'll screw them in to save time because you don't want to see me doing that, and then trail the leads through the holes here. Okay, and then what they do is they ask you to get two Z-bends and cut them to length, which is can you see? Yeah, it's there on sheet 1. Sheet 1's the one with all the fuselage drawings on it, and it says rudder and elevator Z-bends make four using 20 gauge wire or 0.9mm wire, and they give you a little drawing of how it should look. Now, one of them was not quite Z-ed, so I adjusted it and it just disintegrated in my hands. Never mind, but I thought I'd mention it. And then what they tell you to do is to put the servos in, screw them down, centralise them again so that both arms are pointing to the middle, and then put the Z-bends in, and then put a bit of masking tape over the top to hold them in place. And then the whole thing goes that way up, so it's basically upside down. Yeah, that way up. That's important. Okay, now what they then tell you to do is to get former F3, F3 is, I think, on sheet. Let's have a look. I did find this 4 from sheet 6. Okay, so that's former F3. I don't think it really matters which way round that goes. Could do with a little bit of a see. What was that? Take that bump off it. Might as well do it now. Might save on a bit of heartache later. Okay, something's going on there. There we go. Right. So now what you do now is you take that front, slots in there, and don't forget the servos are upside down, and then you get former F4, which goes that way around, slots in there, and then the 2 rods lie underneath out the way, so it should look like this. Okay, now what I want to do is get this glued in to the right hand fuselage as quickly as possible, because it's starting to bend again, and I want to get that flat pretty quickly. So I'm just going to turn it off now, and I'll come back in a second or two. Right, okay, so I've put all the formers in now. I have glued them, and I've used my 90 degrees to make sure they're absolutely upright and square on. And now we've got to do a trial fit for the other side. Now this is going to be not easy. Let's see if we can get into the camera. For some reason I've got a feeling about this. This isn't, because it's pretty much an exact fit, and I think it might take a little bit of jigging about. So let's see. Can you see inside there? You got this notch, and it really is an exact fit. So trying to get that into it. Now I'm not going to try and do this for the camera. I'm going to try and do this for me, because you know this stuff breaks easy, and I want to get it. Right. So what I might have to do a little bit of light sanding. You see, you think you got it, and you ain't. Ah, right, okay. Well, the back end seems to be going a little bit better than the front end. But don't forget, you see, it's still got that little bit of a bow going on. And I'm wondering whether I should put a... hang on. Whether I should put an elastic band around this to help me. Now, see, that's slotted in. This one here is slotted in. So maybe we should work from the back to the front. But you can't use too much pressure, because you just break it. I know you will. I know I will. It's kind of snapping in. It needs a little bit of care and persuasion, because these slots to go in, because you want them to be square on. Can you see what it is yet? Let's have a look. Now we're on former. Is it former 4? Yeah, former 4. Can you hear that cracking? Yeah, it's like an old sailing ship. You know, you don't want to put too much on it. Ah, of course, now we've got this tray here. Ah, that isn't going to help. Ah, yes, that's probably what it is. So this ply ledge here, right, what I didn't observe is I've got to make sure that's in the slot as well as that being in the slot at the same time, so one's working against the other. Now it's starting to go in. Yep. could go in a bit snugger. Snugger? More snugly. Bad English, really. Anyway, so, oh, that's bulging a little bit. Press that in. Yeah. So it seems to have a little bit of a tooth there, a little bit of a dip. So obviously that's got to be as flush as I can get it. And okay, so with the servo tray, this tongue here is still a little bit shallow, but it fits. So that's because we've got the doubler. So that's okay. Okay, so, but you've got to make sure that these other tongues are flush, because otherwise you get that lip. Yeah. So this is, I'm just checking pushing it out a little bit there. I'm checking this is the left side, and don't forget we've got that little bit of a bow going on. And now the right side. Does that go deep? No. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. So there you are. That's a dry fit, and that's what it should look like. Now let's just get rid of these wires here, and we'll see what it says. I think from memory it said to use masking tape and see if the back end will go together, which, yeah, which it does. In fact, I think what I should do there is get one of my clamps. There you go. How does that look? Does it look square on? Is it bowed or anything? Looks your fat, it looks alright. In the old days when I used to do this sort of thing, I used to have a board with clamps either side, and you just clamp it in square and everything, and it's just so unwieldy. I just got rid of it. I'm kind of regretting that now. Okay, so just make sure that is lined up nice and top to bottom. That's it. So what does the instructions say next? Let's have a look. Dry assemble the left hand fuselage, which you've just done. Slide into the assemble formers, ensuring that the former and servo tray tabs are correctly located into the slots. Yeah, that's difficult. On the fuselage, using masking scotch tape or clamps to hold the fuselage sides together, insert the cockpit floor into the space between F5 and F6 so the top of the floor is aligned with the horizontal lines etched on the inner fuselage side. So again, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a line of dots here. Maybe if I can just, oh, there's my pencil. Where have I gone to? Maybe I can emphasize that with the pencil. I could do with a softer pencil really, but anyway, that's where the line is, and there is one on the other side. I know this is not helping, but I can't do this and have you see it at the same time. It's, you know, I've just got an iPhone on a stand. It's ever such a faint line, so it's worth you doing that. I don't know whether you can see that line just there, and that's where it says the cockpit floor goes in. Here's the cockpit floor there's the cockpit floor, and that goes in there. Now I think I will dry fit it just to see what happens. There seems to be no ledge for it. Not sure why that would be exactly. It keeps going down and down and down. Ah, right, okay. I seem to make that line. That one's got to go up a bit. Yeah. So we've got that. That's how it looks. So let's just double check that against the drawing. Line that up. Yes, it is. It's me. This is why I tend to mark things. It's lack of concentration sometimes. Sometimes, you know, you get so into something. So that is in the right place. And if I'm looking at the photograph, there's the servo bay. There's a gap there that looks as though you've got something in it, in the cockpit floor. So that's in the right place. Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is put some elastic bands or tape or something around it, and then wick in the formers against the fuselage sides, and then leave it alone. And I think I'll probably leave it there for now. For those, somebody asked me, what is wicking in? Okay, wicking in. Now let's see, have I got a cocktail stick? Oh, yes, I have. There you go. Some people call it a toothpick, some people call it a cocktail stick. What you do is you get a little bead of glue. So what you do, you take the top off and you put a bit on there, and you just dab it in, and then what happens is the glue runs off the cocktail stick or the toothpick, depending on who you are, and runs into the gap, and that's wicking. You can just go like that, but that'll run everywhere, and you'll probably stick your fingers to the model or the model to the plan, and it's not a good idea. You can get these with like a micro tube. It's a really thin tube, and you can get into places. Anyway, I think this is getting a bit long now, so I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to glue all that together, and I'll see you in part 3.